I'd love to end on that note, but I believe things aren't that simple. So I'll end with something simple because I have a ton of notes on this, and I don't think is going to help either. Religion allows entitlement, and it's when you misinterpret religion and then you label it as, oh, but it's all because of God's grace. Yes, God's grace does exist, but it doesn't mean you become a jackass. I don't care. You can spoil me down in the comments. You can ruin my name. You can tarnish it. But a lot of you need to be called out for doing that. God's grace is not an excuse for you to act like that. And God's grace can't be an excuse for you to act all holy and humble in a false way. Because at the end of the day, something that the weaponization of religion did is it taught you that God is scared of sin, and he becomes unholy because you're a sinner. What the hell? That means you undermine God. That means you underestimate God. If God is so holy to you, as far as the Bible tells you, you know who speaks about this? I wrote about this in my third devotional. This is the first one. So if you are a lukewarm Christian, please go ahead. This will fix you right up. It's harsh and it'll get to you, but you'll walk out a changed man after you read this one. I know I walked out a changed man, more serious about my faith after I wrote this book. I can't imagine what it would do for you once you read through it. I have, like, if you read any one topic, there's always pages filled up for you to fill in. And the reason I have this is so that you can. I gave a journal to one of my friends, and as an inscription on the first page, I wrote, oftentimes when writing, we don't even realize the depth of reflection, self reflection that we're doing. And that's why I wrote these devotionals for you. The other two are already out, the third one's coming by June. That's the one that's talking about God's love the most and who you are meant to be as a son and daughter of God. You need to fill in these pages. I've given you prompts about things you can agree with, disagree with, and any type of conviction that they give in you. And if the conviction is meant for you to be convinced of something, if you are convinced of God's love, or if you are convinced of something that you have been doing wrong in your relationship with God, that's all that this book is for. And that's why the first one is harsh. If you don't want the first one, start with the garden of the spirit and then go to the war room, and then by the time you're done with those, the throne room will be available. If that is your agenda, then that's, if you're lukewarm, then that's for you. But if you're a reassured Christian, right, God can look upon sin. He looked upon his son. Never in the Bible is it written, oh, the clouds were dark. The hell does that prove? That God looked away from his son? No. People quoted this one where Jesus says, Abba, Abba, why have you forsaken me? Right. He's basically talking about Psalm 22. Read the whole Psalm, because that's what people did in that culture. They quoted Psalms, they quoted what David said at any time of day. And you've seen that in the Chosen too, the books of the Old Testament and what's written in them. How can someone almighty, all powerful, be defiled in his holiness because you're in his presence? That is a logic fail. That is a failure of faith. When you are in the presence of God, you get cleansed. God doesn't become dirty, you get cleansed. That's the thing that you need to fix in your mind. When you are in the presence of God, you become better. And He asks you to live in that presence forever. And you can say, oh, but I have my 9 to 5. Invite Him into that. Why don't you say, while you're doing your spreadsheets and whatever, just say, God, what do you think about this? I don't like this, so and so, their life insurance, I don't know, whatever your field you're working in. This person, I ask that you bless them. Pray for the people that you're writing spreadsheets about and fill in their information in. I ask that you work in their life. How more impactful would that be in your personal faith with God when you start inviting Him into things like that, instead of separating every aspect of your life and trying to keep it as far away from God as possible? I'm being serious with you. It's easy to invite God into every part of your life. God is not scared of your sin. God doesn't care about your sin. You know who writes about this? Job. In Job, I believe one of his friends say, if God sins, how does it impact? How does it impact him? Look to the heavens above. This is something that you're going to have to read the whole book of Job about, but I think it's in Job chapter 20 or 24, any one of those in between 20 to 24, it's somewhere there. But one of Job's friends says, if you sin, how does that impact God? God doesn't, like, it doesn't even pinch God that you sinned. And I'm not saying that in a way that you can go out and sin forever and live in a sinful life and have a sinful lifestyle. He's literally saying something that's relevant to something later on in life. He who knew no sin became sin that we may become the righteousness of God. You're not your sin. You are as righteous as God right now. I'm on my way of reassuring myself of that most days. I'm not there yet, but I will be soon enough. And I have that belief in myself. I have that trust in myself because God does first. Everything that I believe, everything that I trust, I've been praying to God about this for the last few months. Is whatever you want for me, I want for me. Whatever you need for me to have, I need for me to have. I don't want to go off of what me thinks, but I want to go off of what you know is best for me. Your knowledge supersedes my knowledge. I'd rather have you lead this than me having to lead being lost. That's the way it works. So God cannot be scarred in any way because of your sin. That is what Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection proved. You can't scar him forever. You can't wound him forever. You can't even put him to death for all eternity. He paid that price and he came back the other side. He's like, gotcha. But that's just the way it works. I can guarantee you that no matter how many times you've sinned and you felt God's grace and love in your heart during worship, it was just to show you that he doesn't care about your sin. He wants you, not your sin. You have a big habit of putting your sin before God and not yourself. Stop talking to God about your sin. Start talking about yourself. Who you are meant to be as his son and daughter. Come to him as a child, not as a sinner. And that's why this sinner's prayer is a complete fallacy. The sinner's prayer, the altar call, whatever that people do in church, especially the sinner's prayer, that stuff is a fallacy. And I say that with utter belief that I know it's a fallacy. The first thing that God sees you as is his son and his daughter, not as a sinner. I don't care if you're a Satanist, I don't care if you're a witch, I don't care if you're LGBT, whatever, HDMI, TV, PS5, I don't care. He sees you as his son and daughter, not as a sinner. And anyone who tells you any different does not know God. Trust me on that. There's many implications of this. The woman that was bleeding for 13 years. Does he say, you sinner, why did you touch the hem of my garment? What the hell is wrong with you? Jesus didn't respond like that. Because your faith astounds me. Because she was like, this is my one hope. That he doesn't even have to say anything to me. I just need to be in the same vicinity and proximity that Jesus is in. And that's more than enough. That is actual faith that astounds God. Instead of having God being astounded by your faith, being astonished by your faith, you're falling for a narrative where God is indefinitely and inevitably just going to be depressed with you and he's going to stay as far away as from you. You're not sick. Jesus took your sin. Forget about your sin now. You're not sick. You're not contagious to God. You need to start showing. Sin is just an excuse. That's what I'll tell you. Your sin, if you keep bringing it up, it's just an excuse to God. It's an excuse to stay away from God. It's an excuse to stay away from his presence. It's an excuse. It's a miserable one at that. It's an excuse to stay away from living a life where you are the best version of you that could have ever existed and walked on earth. From excellence and exceptionalism, sin is your biggest excuse. And the moment you realize that it's an excuse and you start working on your life, you will be a completely different person. Sin won't even be the first thing on your mind. I can guarantee you that. Anyway, I hope you have a great week. That's my biggest message. And this is why I went on a rant about sin. Because this is going to be a 10-minute clip for all of you to see and go through the week. You'll be able to see this 10-ish minute rant of sin. Don't let it be a reason for you to isolate yourself. That's a lie that religion is. That's how the weaponization of the law and the weaponization of the Bible occurs. Don't let anybody weaponize the Bible or the law because you're not living by the law. You're living by love and truth now. I give you one law that is above all laws. Love one another as yourself. Love is the law now. Live in love. Live in a life full of love. If you don't have love and you call yourself a Christian, something needs to be fixed in you. Enjoy the rest of the week and the rest of the month, the rest of the year.